In 1943, the German military command issued an emergency agricultural directive that should have changed livestock farming forever. They identified one crop as the only viable solution for feeding millions of animals through a winter when supply lines had collapsed completely. They called it the famine-proof feed. They said it could produce 10 times the tonnage of hay on the same acreage. 1 acre could feed 30 cows for an entire winter. No grain imports, no hay storage, no infrastructure required. The animals would dig out their own feed directly from frozen ground. 70 years later, you have never heard its name. And that silence has a price tag measured in feed bills, diesel costs, and corporate profits. This is the fodder beet, Beta vulgaris, the complete winter feed they buried because it threatened to make the $500 billion feed industry obsolete. Welcome to Nature's Blacklist. Before we open this vault, understand what you're about to hear. This is not a story about a root vegetable. This is forensic evidence of how a system built on winter dependency handles a crop that eliminates the need to write feed checks ever again. Let us begin with what you are currently losing by not knowing this crop exists. You are paying for hay. The average farmer spends $200 per ton on winter hay. In drought years, that number doubles. Every winter, you are writing checks to hay suppliers for something this crop produces at 10 times the yield on the same acreage. 1 acre of fodder beets produces what 5 acres of hay produces. You're paying for 5 acres when one would do. You're buying grain supplements, corn, soy, distillers' grains. Products shipped from states away, each mile adding cost, each middleman extracting margin. Meanwhile, the fodder beet produces more energy density than corn silage while being easier for ruminants to digest. You are importing what you could be growing. You are burning diesel, hauling hay bales, moving grain deliveries, running equipment through winter months. Your livestock could be harvesting their own feed directly from the ground. Every gallon burned is money the fodder beet would have kept in your pocket. You're watching feed rot. Spoilage losses on stored hay and silage run 15 to 20% annually. That is, feed you paid for disappearing to mold and moisture. Fodder beets store themselves in the soil. No barn required. No spoilage. The ground itself becomes a living silo that holds nutritional quality better than any storage system humans have ever built. You are fighting compacted soil. Every spring you assess the damage. Compacted pastures, degraded soil structure. The fodder beet taproot drives 4 to 6 feet underground, shattering compaction layers that persist for decades. The crop that feeds your livestock also repairs your land. You have been kept deliberately ignorant of solutions that were documented, verified, and then abandoned. Now, pay attention to this next part. In the 1800s, European farmers solved the same problem you face every winter. Harsh conditions, limited hay storage, livestock that needed feeding when nothing grew. By 1850, nearly every dairy herd in Germany, France, and the Netherlands relied on fodder beets for winter survival. The crop was so embedded in agricultural systems that military planners considered it strategic infrastructure. When World War I devastated European agriculture, fodder beets kept herds alive. When World War II cut supply lines across the continent, fodder beets kept herds alive again. Military records document entire divisions maintaining cavalry horses and draft animals on fodder beet rations when grain supplies had completely collapsed. Not emergency survival rations, full production rations. Animals maintained body condition and working capacity on a crop grown in one field. The crop was that reliable. Then something strange happened. The knowledge slowed. The seed availability dried up. Agricultural extension programs that should have brought fodder beets to American farmers simply never materialized. Here's the timeline that tells the story. In the decades following World War II, American agricultural policy shifted dramatically toward commodity crop production. Corn received massive federal subsidies. Prices dropped below what any alternative could match. Corn silage became the default winter feed, not because it was better, because it was subsidized into dominance. The fodder beet required nothing. No annual seed purchases from patented varieties, no chemical inputs, no equipment investments, no dependency. It did not create customers. It created independence. One path led to recurring revenue for corporations. The other path led to farmers keeping their money. Which one do you think attracted investment? By 1970, while billions of dollars flowed into corn breeding programs, into subsidized grain infrastructure, into the supply chains that lock farmers into perpetual purchasing, the fodder beet sat in European seed catalogs, preserved, productive, ignored by American agriculture. It is worth asking why a crop this valuable received almost no attention in North America, while crops that generate annual corporate revenue received billions. It is worth asking who benefits when solutions that require no purchased inputs disappear from public knowledge. The fodder beet cannot be patented in its natural form. It propagates from seed you can save. It needs no proprietary inputs. It stores itself in the ground. It lets livestock harvest themselves. It does not require the feed industry. It does not require the equipment industry. It does not require you to come back every winter with your checkbook open, and it was quietly excluded from American agriculture. Now, let me show you exactly what they buried. The yields of the fodder beet are unlike anything else in livestock feed production. 1 acre produces 20 to 30 tons of feed. Let that number land. This is not some marginal improvement. Hay produces 3 to 5 tons per acre. Corn silage produces 18 to 22 tons on a good year. Fodder beets outproduce hay by 10 times. They outproduce corn silage by nearly double. In New Zealand field trials, yields routinely hit 25 to 30 tons. In optimal conditions, farmers have pushed past 40 tons per acre. That is the equivalent of stacking 10 pickup trucks full of feed from a single acre. But the yield only tells part of the story. Fodder beets are one of the most energy-dense forages ever cultivated. The roots contain sugar concentrations comparable to corn grain in caloric value. But unlike straight grain feeding, ruminants digest beets easily without the acidosis risks. New Zealand dairy trials measured the results precisely. Herds fed 30 to 40% fodder beets in their winter diet produced 10 to 15% more milk solids compared to grass-only winter rations. More milk, from less acreage, with lower input costs. Now here's the math they really do not want you calculating. 1 acre of fodder beets can feed 30 cows for 3 months. Read that again. 1 acre, 30 cows. 3 months of winter feeding from a single planting in spring. To match that with hay, you would need 5 to 6 acres. Compare that to the hay acreage you are currently managing, the diesel you are currently burning, the storage you are currently maintaining, the checks you are currently writing. 1 acre replaces all of it. UK farmers who converted part of their winter program to fodder beets documented feed cost reductions of 40 to 60%. One dairy operation tracked the numbers precisely. They dropped from $2.20 per cow per day on purchased grain to under $1 with fodder beet rations. That is $1.20 savings per cow per day. Multiply by 100 cows, multiply by 90 winter days. That is $10,800 in annual savings from one management change. The feed industry survives on that $10,800 leaving your farm every winter. They needed you never discovering this crop existed. And here's the part they really do not want you to know. Fodder beets do not require harvest. In Europe and New Zealand, farmers simply turn cattle directly onto beet fields. The animals dig out their own feed through winter. No tractors, no balers, no silage pits, no storage buildings. The soil itself becomes the storage system. Farmers call it the living silo. The roots sit in frozen ground, maintaining nutritional quality longer than any harvested feed. No spoilage losses, no mold development, no deterioration from exposure. Controlled studies measured the difference. Fodder beets stored in the ground retain nutritional value up to 20% better than equivalent harvested feeds stored in silage piles or hay barns. That 20% represents feed you paid for but currently lose to storage degradation every single winter. Strip grazing systems routinely add 70 to 100 extra grazing days to the calendar. 70 to 100 days. That is 3 months where tractors stay parked, 3 months where hay barns stay closed, 3 months where your livestock feed themselves while you handle other priorities. One New Zealand trial documented dairy herds grazing fodder beets through snow cover, maintaining full milk production with zero concentrate feed. The cows dug through snow to reach the beets. They fed themselves. They produced milk. The farmer watched. Stay with me, because this changes everything about how you should see your soil. Fodder beets do not just feed your livestock. They rebuild your land. The taproot of a fodder beet drives 4 to 6 feet underground. German researchers measured roots penetrating deeper than any grass or cereal crop commonly cultivated. Those roots punch through compaction layers that have accumulated over decades of equipment traffic. They create channels that persist after the crop is gone. UK trials measured soil density reductions of up to 35% in fields following fodder beet cultivation. 35% less compaction. Without subsoilers, without deep tillage, without any equipment investment. The roots do what machinery does, except they leave organic matter behind instead of burning diesel. And when those roots decompose, they deposit organic carbon feet below the surface. Most crops only build fertility in topsoil. Fodder beets build it through the entire soil profile. Each acre drops thousands of pounds of leafy residue. German field studies measured over 200 pounds of potassium oxide recycled back into the soil per acre. That is the equivalent of skipping an entire round of potash fertilizer. The crop that feeds your livestock also fertilizes the next crop you plant. The fertilizer industry generates $200 billion annually selling what fodder beets deposit for free. In Papua New Guinea and parts of Indonesia, farmers have grown similar root systems for centuries. It was never a novelty crop. It was a foundation. A farmer in the highlands does not need a corporation to tell her what her grandmother already knew works. But in New Zealand, the knowledge never disappeared. Over 150,000 acres of fodder beets are planted every single year. This is not experimental. This is not niche. This is mainstream winter feed production at national scale. New Zealand dairy systems among the most efficient on Earth have integrated fodder beets as a cornerstone of winter feeding. The results are documented extensively: lower grain imports, better body condition scores, improved milk solids, reduced feed costs. Meanwhile, American farmers face another winter writing checks for feed that one crop could have replaced. The knowledge exists. The seeds exist. The techniques are proven across millions of acres worldwide. Only the awareness is missing. And that missing awareness has been very profitable for industries that sell you alternatives. Now, let me give you the production brief so you can grow this crop when you are ready. The fodder beet is a biennial root crop, though it is grown as an annual for feed production. The root is large, often 10 to 20 pounds at maturity, sitting partially above ground for easy grazing access. Soil requirements favor well-drained conditions. Heavy clay or waterlogged ground reduces yields and causes rot. Sandy loam or loamy soils produce the best results. Planting window runs late spring through early summer. The crop needs 90 to 120 days to mature, though some varieties produce acceptable yields in 60 days. Seeding rate runs approximately 1 to 2 pounds per acre for precision planting. Rows typically space 18 to 30 inches apart, with plants thin to 8 to 12 inch spacing. Critical management note: acidosis risk is real. Fodder beets contain high sugar concentrations. Livestock transitioning too quickly can develop digestive upset. The solution is simple but non-negotiable. Introduce beets gradually over 10 to 14 days. Always provide fiber alongside. Hay or straw prevents the problems that sudden diet changes create. Strip grazing with daily moves works best for direct-to-grazing systems. Controlled access prevents overconsumption while ensuring even utilization. Safety note: fodder beets have no toxic components. The entire plant, root and leaves, is edible for livestock. However, the high sugar content demands the gradual introduction protocol. The seeds exist. European seed companies have continued breeding fodder beet varieties throughout the decades. American agriculture ignored them. Specialty seed suppliers carry them. Import is straightforward. Every fodder beet you grow is feed you do not buy. Every winter your livestock harvest their own beets is a winter the feed industry loses your business. Every soil improvement that results is fertility. The fertilizer industry cannot sell you. The knowledge never disappeared. It was only buried, and now you know where to dig. But here is what makes this moment different from every other moment in the last 70 years. The economics are shifting. Hay prices have doubled in many regions over the past 5 years. Grain costs remain volatile. Diesel keeps climbing. The math that once made subsidized corn the obvious choice is collapsing under its own weight. Farmers in the northern plains are already experimenting. Small trial plots of 5 to 10 acres planted alongside conventional systems. Early reports indicate those acres not only stretched winter feed by weeks, but showed faster spring green-up in following pastures. The soil benefits are becoming visible within a single season. Regenerative agriculture communities have rediscovered what industrial agriculture buried. The methods align perfectly. Bale grazing plus root grazing. Your cattle trample hay into soil, fertilize with manure, and then graze beets straight from the ground. You are layering two of the most powerful fertility-building systems in the same field. No hauling feed, no burning diesel, no writing checks. The farmers who adopt early will establish the expertise before fodder beets reach mainstream awareness. They will be positioned for a future where conventional feed costs make current systems unsustainable. The ones still writing winter feed checks in 5 years will wish they had started now. Every season you wait is another winter of dependency you did not have to accept. Here is how this works. The algorithm is watching right now. It is deciding whether this reaches 100 people or 100,000. That decision is based almost entirely on what happens in the next 30 seconds. If you hit, like you are telling the system this matters. If you share this with a farmer still writing winter feed checks, you just handed them a key to a vault that was locked for 70 years. And if you subscribe and hit the bell, you are not following a channel. You are joining a list of people who refuse to let this knowledge get buried again. The next vault is already prepared. There's a water plant that doubles its mass every 48 hours, more protein than soy, more productive than any crop on Earth. NASA studied it for space missions. The United Nations called it the solution to world hunger. It was classified as invasive and treated like an enemy. That vault opens soon. Subscribe so you're there when it does. The feed industry they built requires your winter dependency to function. The equipment industry requires your harvest labor. We are dismantling those dependencies one crop at a time. The next vault opens soon.